So, we should really show you. We'll do that in a minute. Actually, no, we might go there. This is important to the understanding. Okay, we're going to go to his video while we're here, before we forget. Okay. To this video here, which we made a video about it, explaining some things that he was talking about in regard to his translation of those original manuscripts. Hopefully it plays. This former website that was downed for some reason.
Hello, this is Vic Alexander.
Okay, we'll turn it down a bit. It was downed, but we found a way to revive it or resurrect it, and we are bringing it to you via all of our videos.
I've been translating the scriptures for 15 years. I've already completed the New Testament and published it. And now I'm doing the Old Testament commentaries. So today I'm going to start with the book of Genesis. And I'm going to pick on one concept only, and that is the creation of Adam and Eve. So I'm going to read from the Saprat, which means the scripture or scroll of creation, which is how we call Genesis. It's also how modern Jews today call the first book of Moses. They call it Brashit. So I begin from Ipaliun Allah, chapter 1, verse 1. Brashit bara alaha yachmaya yatara. Barid alaha is also means son of God. And Brashit means at the beginning, before the foundations of the universe. This term I have done a whole tape on just this one word. Brashit encompasses the whole scriptures, because bara is light, bara is sun, brishit means at the beginning, at the head. It has a lot more meanings. The word just made up two letters, beat, uresh, that is B and R, has vast roots and meanings in the language. So I won't go into that this morning because I have done it already. I'm just going to go on with the other verses regarding Adam. Brashit bara Allah shmeya yatara. Shmeya is heaven and ara is earth. Because there was nothing at the beginning, there was no time or space. So he created everything, time and space. And now I'm going to go and read from the book of creation, the story of how Adam and Eve were created, how humanity...
So basically, he was saying that this Saprat, or Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 in English, was saying in the beginning the Son of God created the heavens and the earth. So this Gino Jennings is actually incorrect in his interpretation, wherever he's reading from, whatever translation he's reading from. Okay, because this is older manuscripts from around 800 BCE, okay? Way older than 1611 in your modern versions, okay, in the original language, sacred scribal old tongue or language, the Nishan Artika or Saprat or the Katav or the Tav Asheret. Okay, so that's what it's saying. Genesis 1, or sorry, Brita, chapter 1 verse 1, or Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, in the beginning the Son of God, or the Multa, the manifestation of God, created the heavens and the earth. Okay, so we are going to look at these scriptures, these ancient scriptures, very old scriptures, in relation to the Triune or the Trinity. So you can see for yourself there's a great difference between this old Sumerian Mesopotamian concept, Triune or Trinity concept, and your later Tertullian, supposed Roman Catholic Trinity or Triune concept. Okay. So here on his down website we revived, it states the ancient Aramaic scriptures are accessible through this translation project. It was down, we revived it. You could read the words of Maran, Yoshua, Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah, there, and sacred writings of the prophets. They are translated from the original language of the scriptures. This Victor Ian Alexander is a native Aramaic speaking translator. Ancient Aramaic is the oldest form. This is ancient, this is very old Aramaic. It's not that modern Syriac. Yeah, people say, oh, I've got diplomas and all that sort of stuff, and this guy don't know what he's talking about, because they've learnt that Syriac, not this dead language that he's revived. Right? Found a way to revive. Yeah, this is the, and he's also talking about the ancient Galilean Aramaic, which is stemming from that Tab Ashret, ancient Tab Ashret. Okay, so he said he's a Aramaic speaking translator. Ancient Aramaic is the oldest form of the language. This is the language Joshua or Jesus spoke 2,000 years ago, and also his disciples, because they were Galilean fishermen, etc. They spoke 2,000 years ago. It's the language of ancient Mesopotamia and the Jewish people, the ancient Aramaic. This is the language that modern day theologians refer to as Aramaic. Victor Ian Alexander has simply identified this language more clearly than the American churches and the Western translators of the Bible. It is wrong to call this language merely Aramaic. It should be referred to as the very old Aramaic. Okay? There's a difference between that and the modern Syriac. Aramaic is a modern language like modern Hebrew, Arabic, Persian, etc. Again, the Syriac. Most languages of the Middle East and the rest of the world, in fact, have evolved from this first language, the first ever spoken on earth. Supposedly, God spoke to the people that he gave that language to the people at the Tower of Babel, but we think, well, there were a whole lot of people gathered in Sumer or Shinar, this desert region of Assyria, to build this tower and so forth, and they spoke one language. So he's saying that they spoke, because God spoke Aramaic, he gave them that language, and that's what they were speaking until they were divided and scattered, given this other mixer of different languages to confuse them, etc. Okay, so therefore the language of the scriptures should be identified as ancient or very old Aramaic. It is necessary to call it ancient, otherwise everyone can deny that the scriptures were originated in this language, the language that the creator of the universe and his son spoke. This is the language of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses and David. It has gone through thousands of years of evolution, not meaning it turned from a language into a upright chimp, walking human, right? It over time it evolved. The ancient Aramaic language of the scriptures is no longer a spoken language. It's a Tab Ashret, but he revived it. And the last time it was used as a literary language was in 1300 AD. Today the ancient Aramaic remains only as a liturgical language, and so forth. And he puts here, there are a number of Eastern churches that still use this language in their liturgy. In order for the people of the world to start learning about the scriptures truth, everyone must come to understand that the Bible is being disseminated or pushed out today, are mostly translated from the English language versions, or they are conformed to the Protestant and Catholic Bibles of various languages. The Americanized English modern version, and his translation is the only one that has been made from the ancient Aramaic scriptures, or the very old Aramaic scriptures, Tab Ashret, without prejudice. It is made available to you, well, it was from that website, so you have to get hold of it if you want to buy it. Okay. It goes on. Okay. Right, so here's the Sumerian relief. These are Sumerians because that's where it originated from. Okay, he says in the video, people say that's pagan and all that sort of stuff, but it's not. But it had its roots with the Sumerians, or earlier. They weren't Semites, and then when they sort of faded out, the Akkadians adopted and adapted their religious beliefs, their concepts, their culture, their traditions, their rites, etc. Right, as Semites, and then the Babylonians apparently did the same, and maybe the Assyrians adopted and adapted it as well. But from our personal research, we think that all these Mesopotamians, etc., adopted and adapted. They changed details, right? Because of this icon and the person, the figure in the middle, right? It's completely different from this old Sumerian. If you read the myths, there's mythos, there's books on them, the history of them. Okay, so with the Assyrians, maybe it's like, if the book of Jonah is true, that Jonah went to Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria in those days, before 800 BCE, or between 800 BC and 1000 BC. Probably before that, probably sometime during that, right, between those two dates. And he told those people, the Ninevites there, they need to repent, right, and turn to the one true God, because a wrath for their wickedness, God's anger is going to come upon them for their evils, their wickedness that they were indulging in. So the king at the time believed everything that this Jonah said about the one true God. So he writes all down on clay tablets in his language, the cuneiform, that wedge-shaped language. And then he tells all his people, go around the neighbourhood, go around our city and destroy all those Ashtar poles, etc., all those idols. Don or put on sackcloth and throw dust all over yourself and pull your chest hair, pull your beard, whatever they did in those days. And then cover the animals in sackcloth and do the same, because we're all turning to this one true God of Jonah, because this king obviously loved his people and didn't want to see them annihilated. So he said, do that, right? And Jonah goes and sits on a hill and he's like sort of gloating, wow, there's like 12,000 people there, God's going to wipe them all out, you know. And then God says to him, don't you have mercy for those people who may face that wrath? You know, he goes, no. What about 10,000? No. What about 5,000? No. If I save 5,000. So, not liking that Jonah was having this attitude, he had some sort of shade, it was like a palm tree or something like that. So he got this little bug, like a caterpillar or something, to chew away at his shade, and he got hot, got burned in the sun, all that sort of stuff, according to that story. So yeah, this king put those tablets, or those writings on the clay tablets in his language, into a library, right? And time went on, life went on, until it was invaded, burnt, crushed, knocked down, whatever. And then around about 1900, two archaeologists, one named Henry Layard and his friend, Muslim, I believe, or Arab, they found it, they discovered it, they uncovered it, and shipped 50,000 tablets to the British Museum, which are there to that very day. So this Victor N. Alexander, going around the world, him and his wife, went to that British Museum, looked at the artifacts, and noticed they had cuneiform, and underneath apparently they had the ancient Aramaic. So him being able to translate it, in order to he revived it in order to translate the original manuscripts given to him, or bought by him from a high priest of the original Apostolic Church of the East. He found a way to revive it, and he translated that Aramaic. I don't know about the cuneiform, but the Aramaic underneath it, that's what he said on his website somewhere. So he could bring the original Aramaic scriptures translated in English to all Christians who want to know the real truth, right? Okay, so looking at this, here's a winged disc icon, okay, of the Sumerians. Here's a tree of life, probably some high priests there. Okay, got a little bag here. Some say a wristwatch. The bag might have contained some essential oils or a book or something like that, whatever they put in there, right? And all this sort of stuff. So he says here on his video, people think it's all pagan and all that sort of stuff, but it's not. But doing your own personal research, checking out in the history, you might find that it actually, the roots it originated from came from the Sumerians. Supposedly, I think I read somewhere that these Mesopotamians are supposed to be descendants of them. I don't know, because these guys weren't Semites. Yeah, they're probably descendants of the Akkadians or Babylonians, And then maybe when the Babylonian exile was over, these Jews migrated into Ur of Chaldea, or Chaldee, or Babylonia, Mesopotamia, and Assyria, lived there, and they adopted and adapted the local Assyrian culture, religion, language, customs, or traditions, and rites, etc., etc. Right? The language they had was probably Hebrew, or Aramaic Hebrew. Right? They carried it with them to that. They spoke that. Probably being in Chaldee, which idea they probably had a Chaldean Aramaic, because they mix mash. You don't come up with this language, right? Because the languages evolve, right? They take bits and pieces here and come to form this language, right? So maybe the Assyrians already had that Ninevite Aramaic. This is what this translator is saying, that it's the Ninevite Aramaic, right? From the days of Jonah going there to the Asherite, the Assyrian people in Nineveh, the Ninevites. Right, so they probably already had that. Yeah? And then the patriarch Abraham was born in Ur of Chaldea, so maybe they had a Chaldean Aramaic dialect, but again they adopted and adapted the religion, the language, the culture, traditions, rites, rituals, etc. So you end up with what some term as the Assyrian Aramaic, or maybe he terms as Assyrian Aramaic. But if you come across an Assyrian, you'll say, well, there was no Assyrian Aramaic, there's only Aramaic. Alright? So because these Jews later on, when they go into different exiles with different other nations like the Persians, etc., they do the same thing again. They adapt and adopt, or they adopt and adapt the local religion, customs, traditions, rites, rituals, language, etc. And then they go on to another exile, right, and they keep doing the same thing over and over again, and that's how their language evolved. Okay, so we're going to look at his video again to explain or define a certain aspect.
He came into being. So I have published,
skip forward a bit,
here and there, and correcting some mistakes in grammar or in the word meanings or something like that. I would have finished the whole Bible by now. I would have published the whole scriptures.
Somebody try and get to that.
I saw on the History Channel talk
about the Anunnaki,
race, etc. No, this is pictographic language. This is not paganism. So, if the translation of the scriptures was merely all the sort of the creation, everything is explained in terms of aliens conducting genetic splicing and creating the human race, etc., etc. The scriptures was merely taking an electronic file of one of the Bible translations and simply substituting certain words here and there and correcting some mistakes in grammar or in the word meanings or something like that. I would have finished the whole Bible by now. I would have published the whole scriptures. but my purpose is not just to make money. And so I have. So if the translation of the scriptures was merely taking.
Here we go. Okay.
So I,
back a bit too far. Try to get a whole picture of that book.
Father in the bosom of the Father. So it's Ashur.
There you go. Okay, we've covered this before in our other videos. There's the There's the winged disc icon. Here's on the cover of his translation of the original Brita Cypriot. Okay, the old scribal old tongue, sacred scribal old tongue. It's translated into English. Yeah, there it is there. The winged disc icon. See, there's a person in the centre there, and these are wings. This is probably an extension of some sort of skirt. Very similar to the Persian winged disc icon, but that one is a taller person holding a ring and has longer legs. I refer to them as chicken legs, but they're probably something else. Probably some sort of bird, right? So yeah, he says this isn't pagan as most people think, but we did the history of it and found that it's, the Sumerians have a very similar winged disc icon. Okay, we can have a look at that. Just to clear up any misunderstandings of it. Winged. Yeah, so you get a full understanding of it. We can go into great detail of what this actually is here, this Mesopotamian winged disc icon, but we need 100 subscribers before we do that, where we can explain it. This is in relation to the Mesopotamian ancient Triune or Trinity concept, which when we reveal it and when we get 100 subscribers to our channel, will clear up, will make people realize there actually is a difference between this one and your later Tertullian concept of the Trinity. They're similar in ways, but when we explain it, you'll see there is a subtle difference. Okay, so going back there, yeah, that'll cost you 100 subscribers, or a lot of begging.